Hello and welcome to the Lyrical Lounge, KBVR TV's one and only open mic poetry show. I'm your host, Raven Watts, a third-year creative writing and mathematics student here at OSU. One of the most fascinating parts of pursuing creative writing is being able to experience others' work, especially the expressive art of poetry. On our show tonight, we'll get the chance to delve deeper into the personal process of writing and performing poems. It's been a year since the launch of the Lyrical Lounge, and tonight marks the debut of our second season here at KBVR TV. Though we may have a new look, our objective to showcase student poets of all styles and experience levels remains the same. Our live poetry reading format allows poets to lean into the performance aspects of poetry and to promote their original poetry on a larger platform. We greatly appreciate all you viewers out there for joining us tonight to support local student poetry. We've got a great show planned for you folks this evening. I'm very excited to introduce you to our talented and accomplished guests tonight. First, I would like to welcome Bryn Balek, Editor-in-Chief of OSU's art and literary journal, Prism. Tonight she is here to tell us a little bit about her personal journey with poetry and her experience leading Prism. First off, thank you so much for coming on our show tonight, Bryn. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing pretty good. It's still pretty cold outside and rainy, but yeah, I'm doing good.
It is very cold outside and rainy. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
What has your journey been like towards becoming editor-in-chief of Prism? And what are the most rewarding and challenging aspects?
Sure. So my journey started with Prism when I was a freshman. I started by submitting my poetry to the magazine. I'd never done anything like that before, and I was not really expecting much, but to my surprise, 2 of my poems made it into the 2023 issue, Bodies. And the next year, I became a volunteer. And I had a lot of fun doing that, working on our blog posts, our podcast, and helping review student art for the end of year print edition. And I was encouraged by last year's editor-in-chief to apply for this job. And, you know, I kind of thought it was a bit of a shot in the dark, but I took it, and lo and behold, I got the job, and it's been really fun so far. One of our biggest challenges, I would say, is just spreading the word about who we are and what we do and all the cool things that we have going on. But it's been really cool to see all of our new volunteers really get into the spirit of Prism with writing posts for our blog about anything and everything in the art world that interests them and getting ready to start review submissions for our upcoming issue.
That is wonderful. It's so amazing to hear about that. Speaking of writing, how would you describe your own personal work? How have you honed in personal aspects of that?
Yeah, I am a poet, as I said, and that's kind of a difficult question because, you know, my work changes honestly on a daily basis. I could look at a poem I wrote a week or a month ago and it would be really different for anything I would write tomorrow. Personal style is tricky because I think it is ever evolving. I don't think I'll ever discover what my personal style is. I think it's going to be different at every stage of my life, but I do definitely have certain themes and certain ideas that I find myself returning to a bunch in my poetry. The ideas of home, the ideas of change, the ideas of identity, and, you know, connection both between humans and between people and the natural world. Those are things I tend to explore a lot.
I see. Now, how do you pull inspiration for these certain themes that you include in your artwork?
Wow, so especially since I moved to Oregon, I'm from Las Vegas, which is definitely a completely different environment, both weather-wise and creatively. I think I pull inspiration from a lot of different places. So one thing that I've really noticed since moving to Oregon is I do incorporate the weather a lot more into my physical writing. I find myself writing more bright, more funny, honestly, when it's brighter and warmer outside. the winters here have a big impact on my writing as well. So yeah, that definitely plays a part.
I feel like, yeah, definitely weather, personal environment, climate is very important to a writer's work. And I mean, speaking of a different climate, let's talk about the classroom. How do you go about reviewing other students' poetry?
To be honest, and this is ironic coming from the editor-in-chief of Prism, but it's my least favorite part of being a creative writing major is reviewing other people's work. I always just want to, after I read someone's work, I want to say, you created this and thank you. You did a great job. Whether I like it or not, it's an act of creation. I think that's really important to remember when you're reviewing people's work, is that they shared it with you and they didn't have to, and you've been trusted with it. So yeah, as my volunteers are preparing to start reviewing artwork starting in January for our print edition, we're kind of trying to find the things that we're looking for. Because it's a publication, we are definitely looking for quality, all the normal things, the grammar, the spelling, things like that, but also just pieces that they connect to, pieces that make them want to know more about the people and the ideas behind it. That's definitely what we're looking for.
All right, those were some wonderful responses. Bryn, thank you so much for your poetry insight and for sharing your journey with us. We'll now take a short break, but stay tuned because afterwards we will hear the original poetry that our guests have prepared for us tonight. Welcome back to the Lyrical Lounge, where we highlight student poetry performance here at Oregon State University. Before the break, we got the opportunity to hear from Prism's editor-in-chief, Bryn Balek, about her personal experience working with local artists and poets around campus for the magazine. Well, now let's watch as our guest students perform the original poetry they've prepared for us tonight. Starting off, we'd like to welcome Cassius Love to the stage.
Hi, my name is Cassius Love. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a first-year microbiology major. The poem I'd like to share with you tonight is called Love Letters. Listen. The printer isn't working. I have been sitting here in the beaded curtain of gloom that always hangs over it since the first spores of dawn wormed their way past the window. I have done everything in my power, which isn't much, but I have done it. I have ritualistically fed the printer sheaf after sheaf of loose-leaf paper, each as delicate as a rose petal, gently offered like a palm of oats to a shy stallion in the fog. Enough sheafs to make Joey Chestnut cry, "No more, I can't take another bite." But it refuses to eat. I tried pouring the dark potions of ink into the depths of the printer, like offerings to a hungry and vengeful god. And still, it wants more than all I have. I have turned the Wi-Fi off 15 times, and on again 16. I lit a candle in the dark when the screen display faded in and out in an epileptic fit. I held a seance to see if my printer is haunted, and the ghost said to check the router, but no dice. I even lied to the Vatican about being Italian so that I could buy my very own Pope NFTs each time I unplug the printer and plug it back in. I hope Francis has blessings to send my way. I have sung to the printer in the deathly quiet lack of churning paper tattooed with ink about the great distance between the stars, and how I now owe the Pope $3,345. But listen, here is the point. Some things are never meant to be seen again. They're meant to rot in the tomb of the internet forever, instead of being lovingly printed out in bright hues, hung on the wall, passed between real, living hands until the dye fades and the paper cracks, to be placed in a box in the earth and dug up when we are not. First, our warranty expires, then our ink dries up, and finally, in a last wink, the little green lights go out. Thank you.
That was incredible, Cassius. Thank you for sharing your poetry with us. Next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Owen Bruno.
My name is Owen Bruno, and I'm a third-year marketing student, and I've been writing poetry for about 2 years now, and I've brought 2 of those here to share with you. This one I've called Externalities. I tried to climb the highest hill I could find, to run away from all the world's sounds, but even as I reached the peak, the noise didn't ever seem to stop. The trees up here are too thinned out to slow the constant buzz, and the ones we let remain are simply just not full enough to give us any peace. There are lines of people waiting on an endless road below, with all their engines roaring loud to defend their rightful place. And way up here atop this hill, I swear I see it all, but even where I'm standing now, I've been humming right along. And this is another poem that I've titled Drive to Life. While out along its journey, a bee perceives a flower, and so it all begins. The mad dash to act, the need to get by. But when laboring through the bloom, its urgency derives from pure passion. The old pine tree sinks down its roots deep into the ground to create for itself the kind of leverage that is scarcely given for free. And not even for 1 second as its limbs reach up and out is there any doubting why. The unique rhythm of all our beating hearts and all these scattered words now coming together become just another composition of what had yet to be composed. And yet, we all are here for something. Whatever all this is for, the point is lost when we interrogate the life from it, but it returns the moment we get out of its way.
Both of those were lovely pieces, Owen. Thank you for sharing. Last, but by no means least, let's welcome Silas Osborne to the stage.
Hello, my name is Silas Osborne. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a 4th year majoring in natural resources. My first piece today will be called Try Again. There are physicists, bright-eyed and curious, breaking apart atoms in pursuit of the universe's secrets. How it began and how it will conclude, it is beautiful, and it is terrible, and in doing so, they break the world in 2. In response to this violent end, time, multiverse, mercy, whatever name they go by, shifts us slightly to the left, with gentle hands to a new but similar existence, and with a voice warm and encouraging says, try again. So we open our eyes and feel a lingering strangeness, but think nothing of it, continuing on to break apart atoms, but differently this time, without memory of our unfathomable failures, only our smaller ones. And when inevitably something goes dreadfully wrong once more, leading to a death of brilliant heat and light resplendent, again we will be shifted by delicate motion and given parting words we will not remember but will be comforted by nonetheless, as it dances between our new neurons and settles into secondhand bones. Try again. And then my second poem is called Hidden History. There is history hidden in the trunks of old trees. It is in the thickness of their growth rings and the darkened curls of fire scars sweet with resin. There are tales of ancient atmosphere held within the ice, where old oxygen isotopes and small pockets of methane lay quietly entrapped in frozen tombs. There is history in accumulation, a settling of sediment that blankets the sea floor despite an ocean ever churning, A million lives lived and lost, pretty plankton shells and tiny tektites, algae, whale bones, and other sunken things, layered gently one upon the other. There is a wealth of sequestered biological treasures deep within the soil, time-worn charcoal and small grains of pollen from long-stemmed grasses that no longer exist, delicate skeletons and hyphae preserved in rock strata and honey-bright amber. There is history beside and beneath us, as if from the very beginning, Earth predicted our short lifespans with a curiosity that consumes us and buried the answers to all our questions just deep enough that it would only be revealed when we were ready to understand what it meant. Hidden history waiting patiently to be found. Thank you.
Thank you for those lovely pieces, Silas. And thank you to all of our guest poets for such beautiful and engaging performances. Poetry is truly an art that intertwines the expression of our words and emotions in both written and spoken form. We'll dive more into how our guests worked with those elements in their poems after we return from a short break. Welcome back to the Lyrical Lounge. Before the break, we got to witness the live performance of original poems from Cassius Love, Owen Bruno, and Silas Osborne. We'll now move into the interview portion of our show, where we get to learn more about our poets' respective journeys with poetry and performance. All right, I really enjoyed your poems, Cassius.
Thank you.
What exactly was the subject that inspired your poem?
This poem, Love Letters, had a number of inspirations. It actually started out as an assignment for a poetry class I'm taking this term, and it was to take the structure of the poem Song by Brigitte Picking Kelly, which starts with like listen, and then listen, here's the point at the end, and I incorporated that into my piece. And we were supposed to base it off of something tangible, and right away I thought of like a printer, because I have had many great battles with printers over my life, because they never seem to work. It's always the paper, it's the ink, it's something else. And then originally this was untitled, but with the title Love Letters, I chose it based on a show I saw at the Prax recently of the same name by A.R. Gurney, and I thought it was just a really beautiful piece, and it's about these two people over like 50 years writing letters to each other and sort of speaking to each other in that way. And I thought I wanted to add that to this piece of kind of like it's a conversation with the speaker and someone else, and we don't know who that is, and it's kind of up to the reader of why the speaker wants to print something out that bad.
Well, you presented that very well. It's so visceral. I love your imagery. Now, Owen, I've got a couple questions for you as well. Do you have a certain routine that gets you into the mindset of writing?
Well, a lot of the time I don't really intentionally go into something knowing I'm going to be writing. It kind of just happens, and it usually happens when I'm out on a walk or on a hike or sitting on a bench outside, usually alone. And those kind of moments just kind of, I probably feel the most myself when I'm alone and when I'm kind of out doing those things, and so I feel like clear-headed in those moments. And I think from that kind of clarity, I probably get the best, I guess, insight into whatever it is I'm writing about.
Yeah, I feel like that's very important, taking time for yourself outside. Now, Silas, also got some for you. Why is science-based poetry that you shared with us today so important to you?
I love science. As a natural resource major, I just think it's so cool how we as a civilization have like looked under rocks and found patterns and probably broke things that we shouldn't have. And I also think science is a really technical field, and so it's kind of hard to get that emotional aspect of it, because I know a lot of scientists are really passionate about what they're studying. They have a lot of wonder and excitement, and so I just really want to emphasize that scientists bring a lot of passion to the knowledge that they're trying to learn and give out to others. So
That is very gorgeous. Again, very visceral imagery in your pieces. Circling back to Cassius, got another question for you. How does your work in artistic or prose mediums affect the way that you write poetry?
Totally. I dabble in a lot of things. I mostly write poetry, but very occasionally I'll write prose, and I also like writing like plays or sort of like screenplay, that kind of stuff. And I really think that in my other work, I like to be more satirical or absurdist, and I feel like that came through more in this poem. This is one of my more like absurdist poems compared to my normal style. And I also think I really like playing with persona in poetry, because people, when they think of poetry, they kind of think of like the edgy teen being like just channeling all their like raw emotion into something. And I think there's a lot of great poetry that can come out of that. But you can also find the gray space of like, who is telling this story to you? Is it like a third person narrator? Is it just like, this is my life? Or is it sort of somewhere in between? And I like playing with sort of like unreliable narrator, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is to love an unreliable narrator. That's great. Now, Owen, how has writing poetry impacted your worldview around you, since you did talk about how the world affects your poetry?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what it does is it's kind of a part of the same process. It gets me to see things in kind of a way that isn't as obstructed by just kind of the normal ways that I think, you know, which is kind of scatterbrained, and I'm not a very organized person, but kind of when I get into writing, when I get into a more kind of relaxed, I guess, mindful headspace, I would say, like, it gets me to that point. It gets me to that point, and being at that point gets me to write. It's kind of part of the same process, yeah.
It's a give and take situation, like a binary star system. I'm sure you know, Silas, about that. Speaking of, do you have any plans for the subject of your future poems?
I really want to incorporate more of the things that I'm learning in my classes into my poetry. I have a lot of classes about soils and water and plants, and I really want to kind of harness that interest and passion that I have from learning all these new things and capture the moment into poems. But I also really love like nearshore ecosystems like kelp forests and seagrass meadows. So there's just so many things that interest me that I would love the chance to write about.
Mm-hmm. That is lovely. Now, we all came in here with some little Easter eggs. I would like you guys just to point those out for me in a line, going down from Cassius.
I had my long fur bee, Typhon, who was back here curled around the pole.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
I have a capo to the left of Snoopy there that a friend gave to me. It's like a guitar equipment.
Glinting in the light.
And then I have the cool looking journal that's kind of front and center.
All right. Looks very spooky and mysterious. Well, thank you, Cassius, Owen, and Silas, for joining us today and for sharing your personal experiences in poetry. Experiencing your individual poetry styles has been an immensely fulfilling experience for the live audience and the crew here in the studio as well as the viewers tuning in tonight, obviously. It's a brave task to share your art in a public forum, and we applaud you and appreciate you three for doing so tonight. Now, if you're watching and write poetry yourself, apply to be a guest on the next Lyrical Lounge episode. Keep an eye out for flyers around the OSU campus, and follow KBVR TV and OMN to stay informed about our submission details for our winter and spring term episodes. Thanks again to Cassius Love, Owen Bruno, and Silas Osborne for coming on the Lyrical Lounge as our guest poets tonight. We could not have done this show without you. And thank you to all the viewers out there joining us in the debut of our second season of the Lyrical Lounge. I've been your host, Raven Watts. Thank you, see you next time, and have an amazing night.